All right, welcome out to our weekly conference call. This is our Mastermind call. And on this call, we're going to be discussing, this is kind of unique. So this morning I wake up and I see a post on the Daily Edge Business Mentoring Facebook group that Rod posted, and it was so spot on that I actually want to interview Rod a little bit. We talk through this, and I want to invite those of you who I've already unmuted, but like the diamonds and platinums, that if you have any insights into what we're discussing, to raise your hand or speak up or something like that. So first of all, let me just read to you the post, and then we're going to dive into it and get real specific. Okay, so it says, building the business is hard. I hear this frequently, and I feel compelled to challenge this paradigm. The real question is, hard compared to what? Is it harder than getting up day after day by the alarm clock, reporting to work for perpetual existence of no real hope for a future of freedom? Is it harder than devoting your skill and talent to someone else's dream only to be rewarded with service that leaves you without a sense of purpose? Is it harder than going to college for 10 years, or 4 years for that matter, to get a doctorate before you can earn your first dollar, only to start the game with $60,000 to $200,000 in student loan debt? Is it harder than damaging your body, bucking hay or shoeing horses or pounding nails or cleaning toilets? Is it harder than buying a franchise, putting your house on the line for a 50% guarantee failure rate? Is it harder than amassing real estate and watching the economy turn and forcing you into bankruptcy? Considering the income potential, barrier to entry, and actual skill set required, here is the truth. Building the business is too easy. It's so easy, in fact, that most people won't do anything. Why would you? You have not yet nothing at risk. You only had to buy $100 worth of product. The business forces you to be uncomfortable, and a $100 monthly investment just flat out doesn't hurt enough for you to get out of your comfort zone and try something daring. If you believe the business is hard, it is because you are focused on controlling something that is liquid like it is a solid. Let me explain the metaphor. The reason you resort to a job or tangible, predictable work is because you can control it. For example, if I'm in construction, I can learn how to lay the tile and the tile responds. If I employ people, I can hire the talent and I can manipulate or control the output. Network marketing has liquid focal points. Mastering this profession is not about learning how to control tangibles. It's about learning to let go and guide liquids. What is liquid? Relationships. If you feel the business is hard for you, it's because you are focused on developing the wrong skill sets and mindsets. You are attempting to control a liquid like a solid. To expand this thought, ask yourself this question. How am I finding, developing, and maintaining relationships? Now expand the question. How is your relationship with your friends? How is your relationship with your spouse? How is your relationship with your children? If you say poor, isn't it interesting? If I were to ask you what you value the most, you would most likely say the relationships in your life. Why then won't you lean in fully to your network marketing profession? It is, after all, a business about mastering the art of relationships. When examining yourself, you need to be aware if you have personality traits that are attractive or repelling. You need to learn how to see the worth in others and lift them up rather than be critical of people and put them down. Discover the power of humility over pride. Engage people rather than secluding yourself. You cannot serve humanity from your closet. Be present instead of virtual. People need connection and not automation. The fact is that you will become a better person, a better friend, a better parent, and a better spouse by merging yourself into this business. And in the process, you will be rewarded with an intense sense of purpose and worth because of the value you provided to others. The physical skill set is simple. You must learn to invite instead of sell. Invite people to step into the light of membership versus peddling the product as a salesperson. Master the art of relationships, and you will find your fortune as a wellness advocate in doTERRA. All right. So there was a lot that was said there, and we can cover all of this over the course of the next hour. But first of all, Rod, are you here?
Yes. I am.
All right. So I want, like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna talk about different parts of this particular post because I think that what you said was, when I read it, the whole time I was cheering and going, my word, that you knocked that thing out of the park. So first of all, how did it feels kind of like you just started writing some thoughts that had been, percolating in your mind. But when did you receive this kind of inspiration and write it?
Well, I think the concept of the business being hard is something that I hear over and over and over again, and I hear it reinforced all the way to the top. By the way, it's not reserved to anybody that's struggling or anything like that. I've even heard some major leaders say specifically, people need to understand the business is hard, and the thought kept reoccurring to me is hard compared to what? Throughout my life, I've been involved in a number of different careers, and I could say even being a clerk at a convenience store was harder than my network marketing business, as far as pure skills and even the emotional taxation that took place. And so I just found it kind of interesting that people have that idea that the business is hard, and so I think it just stemmed from wanting to challenge that idea and actually introduce the idea, an idea virus per se, and reprogram ourselves to realize, hey, the business is built around some simple skill sets, and it's around a lot of internal reflection that determines success.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. That idea that because the fact of the matter is, I remember when I was building the business, in the throes of it, I felt like it was hard. Like, I felt like, my word, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. But then once I basically hit Blue Diamond, I remember thinking, boy, for the payoff, this should have been a lot harder than it was. And then you start thinking, well, and I think that the question that you asked the best in your post here is, you said hard compared to what? And I think that is absolutely dead on, because I'm thinking of other things that I did, even when I grew up farming. You'd get up early and you'd be, working the entire day, and then you'd come home exhausted, and that was when I showered after work as opposed to showering before work, like a lot of people do. It's that type of job. But I'm going, no, that was hard, and there was no end in sight either. It was I traded this much time for this much money, and that would always be that way. There was no end in sight. And so you're right. I mean, we sometimes talk about doTERRA being hard, but hard compared to what is a great qualifier.
Exactly. I remember in my early days wanting to be a cowboy, and basically there was an infinite number of skill sets that I had to learn and master. And when I didn't, there was continual threat around me, and sometimes life-threatening threat as well. And so, for example, I had to learn how to rope. I had to learn how to saddle horses. I had to learn how to handle animals. I had to, and one day I remember I was riding across the range, a big old herd of cows, and I had cowboys off to the right and the left of me. And I realized that the guy to the right of me and the guy to the left of me were both in their 60s. And I knew that they weren't making any more than me, which was $517 a day, or a month. 517. Our big mantra was another day, another $17.17. So basically, we're trucking around there at $1 per hour for putting our life on the line. The interesting thing is my body is still paying the price. Literally, there's things that I cannot do today because the damage that was done to me from just the stint of that time frame, and it's just fascinating, fascinating when you think, and that's relatively, you don't need a college degree to be a cowboy, and and so, but on the same time, as I go around and I meet different professionals, and I look at what's invested into becoming a professional. For example, my brother's an architect. My mom was a contract specialist for the government, and my dad's a nuclear engineer. My sister's a security security director for Homeland Security. I mean, these guys have some serious skill, but there's a limit to where and I guess in some regard they have some measure of security, but I know every 2 years they're threatened with layoffs.
Yeah.
And so there really isn't the security is actually more imagined than it is real.
Right. And one of the things you point out in the post that you wrote here is that you said is it harder than going to college for 10 years to get a doctorate before you can earn your first dollar, only to start the game with $60,000 to $200,000 in student loan debt? I look at that and I think, people today would say that is being, that taking that course of going through however many years of college, and it could be 4 and it could be 8 or 10 or whatever, and then accruing student loan debt before you've ever made a single penny, spending years learning what you need to learn before you can do something. And people look at that as, oh, well, that's actually responsible. That's responsible thinking right there, And then the thing that's funny is that we work with people on our doTERRA team that are doctors that spent the years doing that, and then they get out of school and realize they still have to open a practice and run it like a business, and it still comes down to relationships. I mean, when people say, "Oh, I love my doctor," well, what do they love about that person, he or she? It's typically the relationship that they have with you, and there's of course their skill, how good they are, but how they make you feel when you're with them. And I just think it's interesting that even that it comes down to relationships.
Right. Absolutely.
So for those of you who are come to the call a little bit late, Rod wrote a post on the Daily Edge Facebook group, and I read it earlier, and then I'm just kind of going through that with him and discussing some of it because I feel like what he said is exactly what we all need to hear. I have unmuted everybody on the call that is a diamond, or at least I think I have. And if you have a comment or would like to add to the conversation, then just raise your hand and I can call on you. Alonto, you have your hand raised.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I love this topic, and I was actually pondering this amazing quote that I heard a couple days ago, and it goes like this. So with any journey that we go into that's new, right? This thing is hard. I haven't done this before, but I've done other hard things I haven't done before, and it came out okay. So I'm not afraid of this new journey. And that to me was powerful because in the things that you outline and what Rod outlined in his post is all these journeys that people go through, right? Like getting a degree or being a cowboy or doing all these things. And at the very beginning, it's hard. But once you go through the journey, once you become a cowboy, it's no longer hard, right? Mm-hmm. Because you've overcome those challenges. You've built up the skill to do the things that need to be done to reap the benefit.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
I just want people to consider that they've done many hard things in their life before. And at the very beginning, it was hard. It was a tough journey. but they overcame it. They did it. And I just want to empower those people that are listening to this call that there's journey in your life that you've gone through that would be considered hard for most other people, but you overcame it. And this just is another journey that you can take that you will also overcome because you've done hard things before.
Right. Thank you, Alonto. Courtney, you have your hand raised. What's your comment?
Hey, yeah, I love this topic. I actually really like it. So I'm covering part of this next week at the global convention, my presentation, and so I've been pondering this a lot lately. And I just want to shift this just a little bit for the women on the call, the mommies on the call, because I think it's really easy, for men to say, well, yeah, this is easier than going getting a degree in a different career. But when we look at as moms trying to build this business, right, it's like, yeah, but there's nothing harder than leaving my babies, right? I mean, that's hard. And so as I've thought about this and been pondering this over the last several weeks as I've been getting this presentation done, even that I would question, and I would challenge every mom on this call to ask themselves, is it really that hard to leave them compared to what you're giving them? So again, it's going to come back to not only compared to what, but what is the payoff in that, right? And so I love that Rod addressed that in his post too, because when I look at everything that the payoff has been for my children, because I'm not here for moments, right? It's not that I'm not here ever, but there's moments in time I'm not here. That's it. It's like, well, I could stay home and I could never go anywhere and I could never do anything because I never had any money. And I would never teach them how to become the best themselves. I would never teach them how to dream. I would never teach them how to even achieve a goal or to set one, right? Like that is hard. That was harder than to have to kiss my babies goodbye and walk out that door and not tuck them in maybe once or twice a week at night, right?
Right.
So I think that even for women, we have to challenge that sometimes because we think that our most sacred, precious things we have is our children. But again, that's exactly why I do this, is because of them.
Yeah, turning your excuses into reasons. Like sometimes you use like in what you're describing, you use something as an excuse not to do something instead of a reason to do something. And I agree completely. And the thing is and I'm sure Rod, you would agree with me on this, but it's not that building this isn't hard. Of course it's hard. It's
right.
But in compared to what? I mean, I look at your situation, Courtney, and I think whatever price you did pay was worth every bit of it because I'm thinking of the type of mother that you would be to your kids before this, and if you were still in the same financial situation as you were before. And you are now, and I'm just kind of going, you can't tell me that as hard as it was to walk out the door occasionally, that wasn't worth it. I mean, it'd be impossible to say that.
Right. It would. It would. And I think it's just one of those things that you have to, challenge that as moms, because I think that's very easy to want to give up at times when we're feeling that pull from our children, right? And the reality is that when you have those moments that victory moment for you, like those I have to hold on to, right? Like I remember, and it's still hard today, right? And I have those moments I'm like, right? But then I have to go back and I remember the moments of when I went diamond and when I got to sit down and tell my kids I accomplished this goal and the joy and the excitement in their eyes. And then I remember the moments every morning that my kids read out their goal cards to epic music and we cheer each other on. Like you have to hold on to those moments that you realize, yeah, it's hard, but look at this. Like, look at what we're doing now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think it's just important to do that. And one other thing is when I look at, this topic too, I think really all of us could say that we all want the same things in life, right? There's no difference in what I want from my loved ones compared to what you want. Really, the difference is our ability to give it to them. And I think we have to remember that. Okay, it's not saying that one of us wants to be with our kids more than the other or have more family time. We all want all of that. but what's your ability to give it to them?
Right. Exactly right. So, Rod, I want to go further on this because you bring up an interesting thought here. When you say, you mention the different things and ask, is it harder than all of these different types of things? And I'm grateful to Courtney for bringing in also the female perspective on that as well. But then you said something like, here's the truth. Building the business is too easy. It's so easy, in fact, that most people won't do anything. Why would you? You have nothing at risk. You only had to buy $100 worth of product. Do you want to expound on that? Because I actually agree with you. I actually think that the advantage that you and I had when we came into this is that all we did was treat doTERRA like we treated our other businesses, and compared to running a conventional business, this is a cakewalk.
Right. Yeah, I think compared to the other things that we've done in the past, this is pretty darn amazing. I think even for a mom, I mean, if income is a factor for a home, and a mom has to leave to go to work, and then there's a huge sacrifice. I mean, I've walked into a number of homes where all the negatives are still occurring on specific time frames because a mom has to go out to earn a living. And the cool thing about network marketing is the profession. It's not that it requires, it's not that it builds itself. It's that it gives you flexibility. For example, if you have a job, you might get a steady paycheck from that, and that might be needed at a certain period of time. But it also comes with a time requirement because you've sold the time, and you have to report to work at specific things, and oftentimes very little flexibility with that. But with network marketing, there's still a time investment, but a lot of times I can choose when that time is. And so in that regard, if you're still asking the question, hard compared to what, I think there's still a valid application there, even for the moms at home. And then as far as what was the next part there?
Well, just that you had said building the business is too easy. It's so easy, in fact, that most people won't do anything. And I think that this kind of ties into the slight edge idea, where it's the things that make the difference, they're easy to do, but they're also easy not to do, and that's the difference. Right,
exactly. Yeah, it's basically fundamentally the only real risk in your doTERRA business. The only thing you have to do in order to get to unlock the commission is run the 100 PV order, and there's a $35 enrollment requirement. And there's, so that would be a minimum. So there's a $35 investment. Most people would spend more testing a restaurant out for a bad meal. And and so on the monthly basis, there's basically $100 worth of product value that you get anyway. So there's zero risk at that point. And because of that, I watch people start franchises. I watch people start businesses and do uncommon things to get their businesses off the ground. I mean, you and I have been around even recently where we've gone to homes where somebody's starting a business, a traditional type of business or something like that, and they're contributing huge hours to that, huge dedication. And oftentimes for a traditional thing, the revenue path isn't even proven yet. And so the idea of even getting it to revenue is still elusive. It could be multiple months out before there's any revenue generated, and yet still people are contributing huge amounts of time because they're invested in it, and they're not letting it go, because they're heavily invested in it. And in this one, because there's nothing invested into it, it's just our thought process. We have our mentality invested into it. And because of that, because there's no risk, there's nothing resisting us. There's nothing for you and I. We poured our guts into it, and I came home from work at 6 p.m. and worked till midnight for the first year and a half to go diamond in that time frame and achieve financial freedom. Well, the reason I did that is because we were starving to death. And the option was to starve. And so that, in my mind, that wasn't an option, and I wanted a better way. I wanted a better potential, a better future. And I had tried, we had done a number of things to create that in other ways, but this way has a lasting effect. And
right.
Even if doTERRA slowly dwindled into the oblivion, it's still better than anything I've ever done. And but as far as when you're not personally invested into it, you have to be self-motivated by willpower, and anybody that's faced addictions knows that willpower is not enough to get you over that hump. You've got to employ a variety of things to create enough accountability to move yourself forward.
Right. You mentioned, so I'm going to stick on this topic a little bit longer. Again, if you're a diamond on the call and you want to add to this, then raise your hand. But the statement that you say here, I think, is so profound, but it's so easy, in fact, that most people won't do anything. It's so easy that most people won't do anything. When I actually agree 1,000% with that, because what you're saying is that because someone has not invested a lot, they don't care. They don't care to do anything. And that's I remember hearing this one speaker at a professional network marketer say that he wished that people would have to spend like $10,000 to to join the business opportunity, because then they wouldn't quit when it got hard. Like they wouldn't go, oh, well, I just thought it would be so much easier than this. And I think that because it's so easy to do, it's so easy to quit. And I'm not saying that, putting on a class is easy or teaching a class is easy. Those are hard things to do. But again, hard compared to what? But it's just that signing up for $35, you could easily say no. Or say, nah, never mind. I want to say that, Holly Orgill, she's one of my 6 legs. And I remember when I was talking to her about the business, I really appreciated the fact that even though she signed up for, whatever the fee is, a couple $100 or whatever kit she got, that I told her, I said, okay, you have some choices. You can be one of my main 6 legs, and that's going to come with a lot of expectations and a lot of, pressure, things like that. Or you can be a silver or an elite. And I said, because this is what I'm looking for, and these come with less expectations and so forth. I think she put over a week of mentally considering it, and then she heard Janet Marquez and Bernie talk, and her husband is a police officer and Bernie was a police officer, and she heard their story, she put in significant time, that even though the financial commitment wasn't much, and that was easy to make, that she took the business side of it, that decision, very seriously. And so that when she called up, she goes, yep, I'm in 100%. And I knew that when she said that, she meant it, because she didn't say it lightly. Like, she spent days considering, praying about, discussing with her husband and deciding that this was going to be a big thing. So I think that we need to remember that it's so easy that most people don't do anything, that actually is a great way for us to consider why people don't do the things don't be afraid to ask your people to invest, because every time they invest financially, it means that they're investing emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, I think it comes back. I've got the cookie type of thing, and where you're recognizing you have value and you can take it away. You're holding the value, and so when you're inviting people, I think most people believe they take a standpoint that the other person has the cookie, and then that reflects in their posture, and then it comes off as trying to pawn off or get them to do something to value you, and that's, they get the process backwards there.
Right. All right. So again, if you have any comments or things you'd like to add, hit *5* and I can call on you. I'm going to go to the next phase here, and that is where it says, you wrote in here, this is a really fascinating idea. It says, if you believe the business is hard, it is because you are focusing on controlling something that is liquid like it is a solid. Would you like to explain more fully what you meant by that metaphor?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to best describe it, and it comes down to tangible things, solid things you can manipulate and control. And most of our lives are set up that way. Like when you go to school, you're trained to handle solids, meaning that solid, predictable outcomes. Math, for example, and physics is all about solids. You know, these are predictable. You do this, that occurs, if then, but, types of results. And
right, like you work an hour, you get this much money. It's extremely predictable.
Right. And so all of our almost all of our emotional training as we're growing up is based around solids. I mean, even dinner time. There's some aspects to that are solid. But when you take that approach, most people are taking an approach to their network marketing business where they're treating it like a solid when in fact it's a liquid. And liquid, or when you try to manage water, you can see, like, if you take your fork and you stick it in a steak, you can predictably pick it up. But if you stick a fork in water, there's nothing that happens. And so it's this liquid management is the distinction of what happens in network marketing. And now the cool thing about it is that solids don't flow and liquid does. And so when somebody learns how to handle liquids, for example, in metaphorically, then the flow can be guided. And so in leadership, this is a point that many people cannot get their head around, and it's probably because there hasn't been a metaphor put out there that describes it, this tangibly, and it's because they build their business in a tangible way according to solids. Now, solids would look like, you have to be on a weekly mentoring call, you have to be at the monthly event. You have to talk to 2 people a day. You have to have a key leader in a certain spot. You have to have certain volume, right? And so when we look at this, we start to treat it like a solid, and which results in management. And so then we start having to have people do certain things in our estimation. But the reality is nobody has to do anything, and we already know that because the investment's so low that most people won't, especially if they haven't done anything and they're getting a check, right? And somebody in a key spot that you've built out. Well, this is a person that you probably need to respond like a solid, but they won't. And so now you find yourself in a quandary, in a state of frustration. But when you look at it as a liquid, and you realize that relationships are all based on volunteerism, and basically this comes back to having to be attractive versus repulsive, and using tactics and strategies that attract, working on your personal side so that you attract, versus the elements and activities and things that you do that repel. For example, working yourself into an oblivion and shedding off the impression that you have to have a full-on face in the grindstone approach to the business is not attractive. And so I remember talking to my upline saying, "Hey, I need to find more builders," and she said, "Go on a cruise." I was like, "What?" And basically, she was saying, go out and live life. Cruises just happen to be excellent because you got a captive. You're with everybody for a few days, and they can't go anywhere. And who goes on a cruise? What kind of people? And anyway, she kind of lined it out. But I've realized that most of my contacts have come not as a result of hardcore prospecting as much as talking to people as I'm out and about and networking. And
right. I think it's kind of interesting that as you're talking about this idea of solid and liquid and realizing, that this is a metaphor for relationships, that you kind of, it's interesting that we actually use language already in our society that supports what you're describing. For example, if I have a strong relationship with a person, we talk about that as being a solid relationship. And I think what happened is that the relationship became strong enough that it becomes predictable. That you can ask something of someone and they do it, and it's relatively predictable because that's become solid. But for the most part, what we're doing is we're letting people flow to us, and while we're waiting for those relationships to become more predictable. I think that's kind of fascinating.
Right. Yeah, I mean, once you start to visualize it this way, there's all kinds of solutions that start coming to mind. If you think about how do you guide water, and that water flows naturally to gravity. And so when you're looking at it, you're countering that to relationships. There's certain things that people respond to naturally. For example, people don't respond very well to force. Generally, it creates fight, right? And people generally respond well to love. So there's certain things where you can, if you look at this aspect of relationships and you realize that you can't treat it like a solid, it doesn't have the predictable outputs, but you can guide it, and it does have a natural flow.
Here's an example that you said in your post. You said, you must learn to invite instead of sell, invite people to step into the light of a membership versus peddling the products as a salesperson. Do you want to expound on that? Like, because this is what you're describing, right? Like, inviting as opposed to selling, one repels, one attracts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this comes back to doors of openness and seeking openness. And it's about, if you become a professional inviter, you'll go a long way. For example, you and I were with a very powerful individual yesterday, but in the two times that he had made approaches around us, we noticed that he was actually peddling the product and peddling the idea and putting it out there as a force, and it was creating some closed doors. And it was interesting. But when the concept was turned around, when you helped him see the idea of what would happen if you invited them instead of telling them, and it was a revolutionary concept to him. But I think people have called me a natural salesperson in the past, and I think it's because I have an innate kind of an understanding. I'm able to discern openness and closeness, and it's a skill that I've been able to develop over the years to understand openness and closeness. And a lot of my ability to do that is because my approaches are question based rather than inviting people to consider things, inviting people to look at something, inviting people to accept something, and then asking permission to move forward. And whereas most people sell and sell and sell and try to convince, and then try to force people to move certain things. And that's, for example, I have a class on Tuesday, and I need you to be there. You've got to be there. And, maybe in some instances that might work if you have a very strong relationship, but that's a lot like trying to lift water. But on the other hand, if you were to take the same person, even if they are a close friend, and say, hey, I'm just curious, are you open to natural health? And you kind of find that common ground, that common rapport, and then from there you can invite, where you're saying, hey, I have a class on Tuesday, where we're going to be exploring essential oils and natural health. And would it be okay if I got you an invitation to that? That's inviting and then asking permission to move forward. And both of these things are very empowering and very natural. And that, in fact, is like guiding water instead of trying to lift it.
Right. Okay, cool. Alonto, you have your hand raised. What comment do you have?
All right, so I love this analogy of liquid and solid, and how it's referred to when it comes to relationships. So when it comes to like that aspect of the analogy of like, say like water, right? So like pretend water is like the relationships that are out there that's needed to be built or needed to be developed. What's important is you can only hold on to like liquid based on the vessel and the type of integrity that vessel has, right? So like when Rod is talking about, okay, like how are you going to guide water or how are you going to take hold of water? Depends on the size of the vessel that you have and the integrity that it has. And it's the same thing when it comes to looking at like building your business, right? How are you when it comes to like your capacity to be able to hold on to relationships, and what type of integrity do you have when it comes to like how sturdy that vessel is when it comes to yourself? And
That's a great point, Alonto.
And knowing like the properties of water, because like if you look, like water is a very amazing element, right? It's probably one of the most powerful forces on earth if you understand like the consistency and the aspect of, okay, one drop might do nothing, but an entire drop compounded to now like a tsunami wave can wipe out the earth.
Right. Jacqueline, what are your thoughts? Oh, sorry, Alonto. I thought you had stopped. Jacqueline, you can go after Alonto.
So you just got to ask yourself the question, like, what type of vessel am I utilizing, and how sturdy or how much integrity does that vessel have when it comes to guiding this flow of liquid when it comes to relationships?
Thank you, Alonto. Jacqueline, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, so when Rod made that post, I was just blown away by it, and I have to admit, I didn't even read the whole thing. It's like I read the first little bit, and I'm like, holy cow, this is so, this is so amazing. And then I actually made a post for our team promoting his post, but I'm trying to figure out, because I'm completely technologically incompetent, how to get his words from there. So I'll let David do that. He does all that stuff. But anyway, this is just kind of going off on a tangent. I hope that's okay. But I just wanted to give some of my thoughts about this because, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about like my husband's and I combined, years in school is 13. I mean, that's a lot of years. 8 of it was him going to get his master's, and then I took 5 to get my bachelor's because I had, a little kiddo. And there's been several team members who I can tell, especially with the whole FDA stuff, have really been frustrated, and I completely understand. But when I consider, even though I'm not the one who got that master's degree, right? when I consider, yes, I was a stay-at-home mom after I finished my bachelor's degree. I spent hours. I had pretty much had to take over, every child care, anything, right? Because David's working full time, going to school. And then once he wrote his thesis, is hundreds of pages, and I was the editor, so even if your spouse is the one making the money, like as a mom, you are making, equivocal sacrifices in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
To kind of speak to what Courtney was saying. But when I consider that, like, I almost want to laugh when I hear people complain. Like, seriously, like, I just want to think, really? Like, and then I'll be like, have you, do you know what it takes, like, and a lot of people don't. Like, they chose not to follow that path, which is totally fine. But when I think of what we sacrifice, like, the financial, financially, holy cow, it was huge. And we even, like, a lot of it too was we just like worked our tails off getting scholarships and stuff. And then when I consider like sleepless nights and the mental and emotional strain, I mean, and just hours, like when you look at the quick start guide, it says 15 to 30 hours for full time. Consider, as this, when you're going to school, that's laughable. Like you're not spending 15 to 30 hours. And let's say you spent more than 15 to 30 hours on your doTERRA business, and let's say you're making $3,000. Well, guess what? It's still a better deal than school, people. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's amazing. Like I just can't get over it. Like when he made that post, I just thought that is just so right on. And I don't think unless you've gone through what my husband and I went through to receive an education, and we actually were able to because we worked our tails off, leave with pretty much no debt whatsoever. But that's because we started businesses and did those while we were going to school and worked full time. I mean, killed ourselves off to be able to leave education with little to no debt. And so even if you don't have the 60 to 200,000 or whatever, like that means you killed yourself off getting that education. Like we do not look back on education like, oh, that was such a great time. I mean, I actually really love college and I love learning, but it's not like for anything. For $1 million, you could say, do this again. It's like, are you kidding me? I'd rather, bamboo shoots up the fingernails every day. It's crazy. Then I look at like doTERRA and I'm like, okay, just the product alone. Like I'm going to get emotional. Like just our pets, like how we can help our pets alone. I mean, just our children, like the energy, there is so much power in essential oils and whole food supplements. It is amazing. I have seen so many lives change. I mean, it's incredible. So just that alone, the product. Then when you consider residual income, let's say you're only making $500 a month. That is huge when you think of how much it takes to get $500 a month if you were going to retire. What kind of money you'd have to put in an account in order to be getting $500 a month. I mean, I just think it's amazing that people get bitter. I'm like, what? And I mean, I understand it's hard, but seriously, people, let's think about this. Let's think about this. Like this, you're building relationships, like lifelong. My best friends are in this company. And when I think of like, so me and my siblings that I work with in doTERRA, and then my in-laws, like my two sister-in-laws are some of our biggest leaders. And I love working with them. And then they've gotten to know my siblings super well. Like the family dynamics, you don't see that anywhere. I was talking to a lady the other day about it, how we've developed these relationships from my husband's family with my family. I mean, that's unheard of unless you like grew up in the same town. It's just amazing. So I know I've just rambled, and I probably sound like an idiot half the time, but seriously, like what Ross said is a million times the truth, and this is just such an incredible company. Like, let's say everything went away. Let's say my entire downline fell away. today. Like, whatever. Like, I would not regret one moment what I've gone through. Now, let's say my husband's education went away. Like, all of a sudden they pulled his master's degree, they pulled my bachelor's degree. Do you think I'd regret? Oh, you better believe it. I'd be bitter. I'd regret it. We went through all that for what? Whereas with the terrorists, like, we went through all that, to have really great health for the last 5 years, to get health back that we thought we would never renew, to have children who are emotionally and physically stable, even, with crazy parents like us, and to build relationships like we built, like, it's amazing. So I'm done. I'm done talking, but I just had to say something.
I love it. You're right. You're dead on. And this is going to bring me to my last point, because you actually didn't just ramble. You took it into a great, where I'm going to end the call with Rod here. So Rod, at one point in your post, you said you need to learn how to see the worth in others and lift them up rather than be critical of people and put them down. Discover the power of humility over pride. Engage people rather than secluding yourself. You can't serve humanity from your closet. Be present instead of virtual. And here it is, right here. Be present instead of virtual. People need connection and not automation. Okay. The reason I wanted to end with this is because there seems to be this desire, this innate desire inside of people to say, couldn't we just automate all this? Can't we just put the training up online and then people can go and train themselves? Couldn't we just have something that we put out an ad on Google and people sign up in our downline and then they just send out something and we never have to know or get to know anybody? And if we just automate this whole thing, why is that stupid, Rod?
Yeah, I think, if people have asked what the secret is to network marketing and successful team building, the dream resides in developing strong leadership. And strong leadership is developed by spending time with people. And so people are trying to process a ton of people in automated ways. And sure, there's some things that we can do to ease some of the general information and things like that. But the irony is like you and I spent most of the afternoon yesterday with a heavy hitter. I mean, a gentleman that's been obviously enormously successful in his career. And we were sitting in his big house and talking to him, and we were explaining basic principles for the third time. And but as you and I talked about this, oh my gosh, we're telling him the exact same thing. But in the end, when we were visiting about it, it came down to, well, it didn't matter because we weren't really there to explain the business. We were there to strengthen our resolve, to strengthen his resolve and his desire to be a part of us. And that takes belly-to-belly activity, or face-to-face, or personal connection. It's the piece that can't be automated. The reason I've been able to have such a huge result with so few enrollments is because my focus has always been the development and solidification of the leaders. And that, I still personally enroll. I'm still looking for the next generation of leaders. I'm still inviting. I still offer the products out. And so basically I invite everyone, but in recognizing that some of those people are going to buy product and a few of them are going to want to make money with it. And so what I'm doing is I'm inviting a lot of people, and I'm getting people set up so we can get oils in every home. That's part of the basic mission. And then I'm taking those handful of people and I'm investing heavily into time and relationship, because ultimately people need connection. And in fact, I remember reading one time an article about a Russian orphanage where babies were having all kinds of complications, and they'd kind of dialed it down because nobody would pay attention to them. There was no one holding them, no one picking them up, no one giving them any attention.
Yeah, Rod, I think you're dead on, because, like, for example, we say, we'll say something like, hey, isn't there a way to automate the membership overview? Can't someone just sign up and go watch a video? And you're like, you can, or you can go spend time. And we may call it a membership overview, but in reality, it's time. You're spending time with that person. And yes, it serves other purposes, but the important purpose is it establishes a stronger relationship, which then leads to another meeting. And that meeting establishes a strong relationship. And when we get out of this, when we keep on trying to say, oh, I just wish that I wouldn't have to, if I could just sign people up and they just go and do this, it'd be great. It's like, you're right. But this is not a solid. It's a liquid. It's a liquid relationship that needs time to solidify. And you have to spend that time.
Absolutely. And, I had somebody sent me a personal note this morning about some people that had gone diamond in 8 days. And they were trying to get their head around this concept of, how is that possible? How is that person able to do that? And I thought, well, one is you got to recognize the reality that it takes about a year for leaders to solidify. And so in that case, either those relationships are pre-existing, which means that they spent probably a year in advance to building trust with those people to where they would come on in that kind of force, or that organization is not going to have any volume next month. and so when you think about it, you think about these types of things, most people are trying to subvert the critical steps. Like the system is set up for the next meeting, and we've run the next meeting, right? The first meeting is the class, the next meeting is the member overview, the next meeting is the business overview, the next meeting is getting started. Well, we did that on purpose. It's set up so that you have a reason to meet next. And because it's those multiple times of contact that are actually going to create somebody that falls in love with the oils, that'll stay on LRP, and maybe even share it with some others so that we can forward the mission of getting oils in every home at a more rapid pace. And believe it or not, that is faster and more sure than just flat out, mass canvassing the world in an automated way.
Right. One of the greatest books ever written on business is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think that, and I actually think that in our profession, maybe a more accurate title would be How to Win Friends, because that's how you influence people. Is you be their friend, right? It's like your ability to influence people is directly related to the type of relationship that you have with them. And
right.
I love your post.
The bigger ranks. The ability to hit the big ranks is your ability to influence.
Right. Yes, and I think, and anyway, when you wrote your post this morning, I just thought it was dead on, and I thought, you know what, if we do the mastermind today on this particular post, it would be fantastic, because let's just summarize what you said. Yeah, you could say that it's hard to build it, but hard compared to what? And in fact, let's just be honest, it's easy, but it's so easy that most people don't do it because it's so simple. It's so simple that people don't do it because they don't give it the same respect they give other things, and they try to treat it like something that's predictable when relationships are liquid. So go and develop relationships and solidify those so that your business can become successful, and stop trying to get out of that. Stop trying to say that it's not about relationships and automate something that's not automatable. Relationships aren't that way. Go find your leaders, spend the time, and in spending the time, your relationship will grow and your business will become solid too.
Right. And if you find a weakness in yourself in that process, identify it and work on it. And you can overcome it and you'll become a better person.
Right. And if you find yourself repelling others and people won't listen to you, this is good. You're finding out what's going to stop you from being successful in the rest of your life, including parenting and spouse and being married and all those other important areas of your life. It's fantastic. I actually love network marketing especially when it's done the right way, with a great product, a great company, with a great comp plan. When it's actually real, when the product delivers a great value proposition, I love network marketing. We get to spend our time building relationships and raising our kids around people that are awesome. sign me up for that.
I'm in.
All right, we're a little over time, but thanks everybody for coming to our mastermind call today, and thanks Rod for writing such a phenomenal post, and everyone who contributed. We'll see you all next week.